Here's something that you need to understand as you navigate this world as a woman when it comes to sex. Okay, the first thing is that alcohol and also drug use, if we were to go so far as to talk about that, ultimately, people will always use alcohol as an excuse and as a reason for poor behavior. And in these conversations, often we do not want to shame people for their habits, mistakes made, etc. But you have to understand something very clearly, particularly as a young woman. There are individuals who are bad actors. There are individuals who are indeed predators. And any opportunity they get to carry out these evil acts in a world that does a lot of their PR for them, they will. And so it's very important that you understand that ultimately you have to keep yourself as safe as you possibly can. And that is another reason why it is very important to think about your alcohol use. You need to think about the context within which you drink alcohol in the first place. Because when things happen, as they do at times, and unfortunately we can't predict who they might happen to. We can't predict who, unfortunately, will experience some of these situations in life. When they happen, you will be blamed. Okay, you will be asked indirectly, directly to hold responsibility for what has happened to you while you were drunk. Now, I need you to use your critical thinking skills. I need you to walk with me here, because what I'm not saying is that I, for example, believe that you are at fault. What I am saying is, as women, okay, and unfortunately none of us are exempt from this. This is why sometimes I might say as a young woman, as an adult woman, really age is irrelevant in this. Except for the fact that I do think for a lot of younger women, it's your first time being young, okay? You may have less inhibition. You may not really fully realize some of the consequences of your actions. You may not fully realize the extent to which, okay, people in your environment are willing to go. And you may not even realize that some people are more than happy to take advantage of you, exploit you when you are vulnerable. Okay, and what makes it worse, of course, is that often, okay, as adults and as human beings even, we go into social situations, we go out, we spend time with someone, maybe in a home, and we drink alcohol, and we think that that should be safe. We may even drink one too many. And the reason why I'm very frank about this, because this is not unusual. It's not a one or a few people. There's not really any need for us to morally indict one another over this, because drinking is so common. People drink alcohol. That's life. Okay? The trouble is when we drink too much, when we drink to the extent that we cannot remember where we are, who we are, where we're going. That is a problem. And although it is commonplace, that does not mean that you should deliberately, okay, do these things, okay, hoping that something bad does not happen to you. Because one thing I want to tell you, and I often, when I'm training people in small groups, when I'm doing one-to-one sessions with people, I can be more frank, because hopefully they can hear my heart along with the words. You will be alone. You will be blamed. It will feel isolating. And we live in a world right now where you can go online, for example, and hear people pontificating, speculating, yes, making judgments, drawing conclusions, often about the intentions of the woman who has been harmed. And that, depending on where you're at in your healing and recovery, can be very challenging, okay, to hold. Okay, this is why I'm telling you, I don't think sometimes we're frank enough. And I do think sometimes the people who attempt to shame victims of certain things like abuse, assault, etc. There are some people who are genuine human beings, and we can give them a little grace, because maybe actually what they're trying to do, or they understand that we live in a world that is unfeeling and uncaring towards women. It is a cold world. And so maybe the best way they know how is to tell you to keep your legs shut and never be alone with a man, right? It's crass, it's crude. I suspect there are some genuine human beings, particularly maybe if they're women, they don't know what else they can tell you at this point, because it's a losing battle. We may talk about, women's rights, human rights, feminism. We try our best to impart wisdom, but actually we are often swimming against the tide of a global culture where a woman's life is valueless, number one, and where actually women are stripped of their rightful authority over their own bodies, to the extent that if you're sleeping and a man wants to penetrate you, touch you, apparently that's okay. If you are unconscious for any reason, look at those women who are in vegetative states, comas even, in certain facilities, who suddenly become pregnant. If you are a corpse, a man may choose to touch you, and you can go and research that. The other day there was a video circulating TikTok where a man is in the sea with a stingray, and he is essentially assaulting the stingray, okay? We live in a world whereby fundamentally it does not believe that you as a woman deserve rightful authority over what happens to your body. And if you as a woman, okay, even, you overdrink, you fall asleep in a car or a bed or a home that is not yours. If you go into a car with a man that you don't really know very well, or you found attractive, you were attracted to him for whatever reason, maybe he's well known, famous, or you just feel attracted to him. All right, if you're in a lift, apparently you therefore have fundamentally consented and given permission for somebody to touch you, to use your body for their own release. And you know what, at this point, I am done, okay, even sugarcoating this stuff, because the thing about predators is they know they are preying upon you. That's what's actually happening. They know they are violating you. And we unfortunately live in a world that even when we see CCTV footage of a woman staggering, clearly staggering because she is inebriated, intoxicated, maybe even under the influence of drugs, we still think it is okay for a man to think, do you know what? I'm going to take her home. And when I take her home, I am going to have sex with her, even though she is intoxicated. You see, we live in a world where it's that cold. And so really and truly, as a woman of any age, but I think particularly if you're a young woman and you are going on your first forays and exploring things socially, maybe you're at university for the first time away from home, or you've gone on a girls' trip for the first time with your friends without your parents, whatever it might be. You've traveled from London to Oxford to go out. You have to think about how you are going to protect yourself as best you can. Like I say, we can never predict entirely which woman is going to befall this kind of incident. But what I can tell you is we need to have far more frank conversations. You want to have fun, you want to relax, you want to let your hair down, you feel like you should be able to feel safe around other women. No, unfortunately, that's not always the case. Okay, now I understand that I probably have some kind of wisdom because I'm 37. I've grown quite a bit. You get to a place and a stage emotionally, mentally, maturity-wise, hopefully, where you think to yourself, do you know what? This isn't worth it. We wish the world could be different, but it is not. There are going to be times where you meet a man in particular who you are attracted to. You would love to drop your panties for. That is the truth. You want to. Okay, but you also have to think about your dignity, your sanity. And again, you must use your critical thinking skills here, and you must hear me well. You must hear me well. I am not saying that you cannot be attracted to someone. I am not saying that you may not desire someone sexually. I am not saying that you should only have sex in marriage, I'm not saying any of that. What I am talking about is the reality of sometimes how these situations arise. And the fact of the matter is, this world does not give two hoots, okay, about your dignity. And that includes other women. That is why you will still see other women with internalized misogyny blaming you. And like I say, there are some genuine human beings who are at their wits' end, really. They don't know what the solution is. They don't know what the answer is. They don't know what to tell you so that these things never happen to you. So they end up telling you things like you shouldn't wear that and you shouldn't go here. And you know what? Don't have sex with men that you're not married to. The only gag for that is that women who are married are still experiencing sexual assault. So, hey, right? This is why I'm saying that in the end, unfortunately, you will be alone. You will feel isolated and it will feel like nobody cares. I have literally been witnessing and observing over the last few weeks conversations being had on social media recklessly, quite frankly, reckless conversation about assault. And the impact that can have on women who have experienced it is there are no words for it. But this is why, as I sit here, for me as a 37-year-old woman who comes on here and talks about self-authority, how you become an unpunishable woman, how you navigate breaking invisible contracts, the importance of pleasure authority when it comes to your body. We need to understand, okay, that it's not that people don't know that these things can happen. It's because they don't care, okay? And what we need to get to grips with is that predators, okay, they don't really have to defend themselves because the rest of the world does that work for them. They have some of the best PR predators because it's never their fault. They never knew what they were doing. It's always a misunderstanding and it's always the woman's fault. That means predators get to prowl this world with unfettered access. Okay, we don't question a man on how is it you are still aroused by a woman who is drunk out of her mind? How are you still aroused by a woman who is asleep? How are you still aroused by a woman who is crying while you're on top of her? How are you still aroused by a woman who is telling you she is in pain and she would like to stop? See, we don't have those conversations because there's always some reason around it. The other day I saw, well, what happens when both people are drunk? Okay, let's talk about that. See, we can talk about that. That's an entirely different context. But the truth of the matter is the majority of these assaults are not happening when both people are intoxicated, inebriated. And even so, then we're all just losing our senses then. Do you see why I'm doubling back round to talking to you about alcohol use and drug use? This is very important. If you are a young woman and you barely know the other girls that you're going out with, no, you cannot rely on them to protect you and look out for you because not everybody is the same. And number two, the other thing is when you're all young and you're all being reckless, you can only expect so much. I think we forget that, you're all in your late teens. Really and truly, sometimes there isn't enough wisdom in the room to rub together 2 cents. This is why I'm saying to you, you have to, unfortunately, as a woman, I say unfortunately, but some of this it's an honor as well to come into this knowing of oneself. When I talk about psychological adulthood as quickly as possible, the area of sex and your body is the area that we cannot keep doing delayed development on. We cannot keep doing delayed because sometimes it actually means your life and other times it means, you carrying a wound sometimes for the rest of your life. So I cannot emphasize enough. And the thing is, let me tell you this, there are going to be times where you meet a man who encourages you to drink alcohol, who asks you if you want to drink, especially maybe if you discussed having sex. Okay, I get very irritated because a lot of our conversations are not frank enough. There are times where a man will say, well, just relax, have a drink. What do you like drinking? Do you drink alcohol? Okay. You must have your head screwed on straight. And here's the thing, for the men who aren't predators, I suppose, who do enjoy casual sex, which is not careless, and they deem themselves to be safe. Yeah, because you see, the thing is, as a woman, whatever your age, you have to have your head screwed on. So every man wants you to believe he's safe. Every man wants you to believe it's fun. Every man wants you to believe that if you go to his house or he comes to yours, or you meet him in a hotel, or you meet him in a car for sex, every man wants you to believe that he's safe. And like I said, some of them might actually be safe. And maybe you can have that casual encounter without it becoming dangerous, unsafe. And, I really hope it's pleasurable for you too. But hey, the point is, you don't need to keep thinking what he's thinking, because at times you might meet a man who in himself believes that he is safe and actually isn't going to harm you. That's not your business. You must always be estimating your safety. your well-being and your pleasure. You cannot leave that in the hands of somebody else. And that might mean at times you feel to yourself, I'm being oversensitive, I'm overthinking, I'm being too harsh, because maybe he isn't actually like that. The problem is sometimes you don't always know. That's the problem. You don't always know. And so I'm saying to you as a especially when you're young and you're first going into these situations, when you're out socializing, be mindful of how much you're drinking and whether or not to drink at all. Because on the flip side, if you don't remember what happened, if you wake up in somebody's bed and you don't know them, you don't recognize them, you don't remember how you got there, unfortunately, you will be told it's your fault. That is the reality. That is the reality. It will always be your fault. Okay? It will always be your fault in the eyes of the world, and even people that you love and respect and you care about, that you thought loved, cared and respected you. In some way or another, sometimes, like I say, they can't help themselves. They can't help themselves. It will always be your fault. So be mindful of alcohol consumption. This is extremely important. The same for drug use as well. Be mindful of that. The other thing is, do not question your own decisions about your own safety. Because like I say, there are men that you will meet who might actually be safe. And they're like, come and meet me. You want to meet them. This is a man you want to drop your panties for. You're thinking, this is my choice. I desire this. I want this. I'm sexually attracted to him. The thing is that even if in your mind you decide, you know what, I don't, and I'll give you an example. There was a woman once who, we were having a chat, and she met somebody, met them online, was attracted to them. It was agreed that they were meeting specifically for sex. And so she goes to meet him, and she chose to go to his residence. And when she got there, she had sent a friend his address and his name. She screenshot it because she's going to meet someone she doesn't know before. Now, listen to me well, because there'll be some people who are hearing this who think, why would you go to a man's house that you don't know? And why would you go to have sex with one? This happens. Okay, we need to be adults about this. You may not be making this personal choice yourself, but the reality is there are millions of people who do, and nothing happens. They enjoy it, they move on. Some of these encounters turn into relationships, right? There's all sorts. We can't pretend these things are not happening, and we can't pretend people are not doing them, including women, okay? And enjoying doing it at that. She goes to his home. Now, nothing bad happens to her. What happens, happens. But halfway through the evening, he says something to her. I can't remember exactly, but he asks her something, and she says, well, actually, I've sent my friends the address for where I'm at. And he gets annoyed. He says to her she should never have shared his address with anybody else. Now, here's my point here. He feels that he is a safe person. And actually, in that scenario, nothing happened to her. Nothing bad happened to her. The point is, though, she did what she felt was safe. And you have to realize that sometimes, for some reason, some adult men in particular haven't gotten the memo about the world that we're living in. Even though in the next breath, if they were to hear a complete stranger say that they went to a man's house to have sex like they discussed, they had sex, a good time was had, yeah, or they had something happen and something bad happened to her, then they would be sometimes the first people to say, well, why did you go there? Why are you going to a man's house in the evening without thinking that nothing's... Do you see where I'm coming from? So some of them either haven't gotten the memo or they are ignorant, that they can't connect the dots, right? So they think they're safe, and therefore you should automatically trust them and not question the scenario at all. But like I say, in other situations, if they were a stranger, a third party hearing another scenario where things didn't go okay, they would be the first to say, why did she go? See, we're you might have male friends, male family members who you think they would never do that to anyone. That's not the way they see women. You might have a male friend who is quite happy to chill in a house and not feel like he is entitled to having sex with that woman, not feel as though if he initiates it and she rejects it, that he's been hard done by. Okay, that he has a right to continue because she's in his home. Do you see where I'm coming from here? There will always be a man that believes he is safe and does not connect the dots on the fact that you have to do a safety assessment, because ultimately, should something happen to you, you will have to live with it. Okay? The other thing I want to talk about at this moment in time is, look, it's a very weird world that we live in, because there are individuals who actually do commit crimes. And when I say commit crimes, I'm not specifically even referring to sexual crimes, but they commit crimes, theft, for example. Maybe they're involved in the drug trade, whatever it might be. And they may have been caught 1 or 2 times, and they go to court and they are acquitted, even though they full well know they did commit the crime. In fact, some of these people are deep in to certain criminal circles and lifestyles, but they have managed to evade the law, or when they have been caught, they have avoided going to prison. And they will be the same people who implicitly trust the legal system when the legal system investigates things like rape, sexual assault, and acquits the accused. Now, here's the thing. Can you see that contradiction? Again, you have to understand, particularly as a woman, in the world that we live in, you are alone. Because what we often do is avoid, we make up things that don't actually exist. And you'll have people who full well know it is possible to be arrested, go through a court system and be acquitted, even though you committed the crime. Because the legal system is not really about justice. And anyone who studied the law like I have knows this all too well. The law is the law. It is not the same as justice. And it's not even half the time the same as truth. Do you hear what I'm saying? Okay, and so it's always very interesting to me, this kind of implicit trust that certain groups of people have in the law when the law is investigating crimes against women. But when it comes to other types of crimes, when it comes to the legal system's treatment of certain groups of people, which is known to be laced with bias, suddenly they question that the same legal system. I want you to understand that ultimately, unfortunately, we have to take on the burden and the privilege and sometimes the honor. It's all of those things of looking after ourselves well as women when it comes to sex, and specifically when we are navigating sex with other human beings. Now, of course, in this video, I understand that a lot of my videos tend to be heteronormative, and what I mean by that, I do tend to talk a lot when I'm talking about sex, the invisible contracts around sex, the things that I think women need to know about sex. I am talking, generally speaking, about the dynamics between men and women, okay? But these dynamics occur, they exist in same sex. It doesn't really matter what your sexual orientation really is, because we're talking about human behavior at the root of it all. So I do want to acknowledge that. But what I would say is that the systems of power that be, okay, have enabled certain behavior in maleness towards women. That is a fact, and that is a reality. Okay, the value of a woman's life is very low all over the world. And we really do not believe, let's be honest, based on the evidence and research, that a woman has a right to exercise her self-authority over her body. We are ultimately living in a world where the evidence says that actually a woman should make her body ever available to any man for any reason. You're not allowed to say no. You're not allowed not to desire them. And if you make any human mistake, such as over drinking, such as maybe misjudging a man's character, getting into the car with him, going to his home, inviting him to your home, you will be blamed for whatever happens thereafter. I wish it was different. I wish I could tell you it was different. I wish that I could tell you there's a special, guarantee, fail-safe process to avoid this. There is not. Because ultimately, one of the things we fail to recognize in this world is that predators are predators. And one of the worst things that we have done is now lumped all of this under the guise of misunderstanding. I didn't know you were in pain. I didn't know that you didn't want to. You didn't explicitly say yes, say no. But then you did say no, and then you changed your mind. Okay, we live in a world where there is no onus on anybody to actually proactively seek enthusiastic consent from the other person that they want to touch. So either way, whatever way we dice it, it will always be your fault. And the truth of the matter is, and I can tell you this from experience, that is something that you often have to live with. And that is something that you have to do the work to heal and recover from. Again, look, Everyone's on a separate journey with these things, and I do not want to give the impression that there is even a set way to heal and recover. That I do not want to even encourage any kind of comparison. What I'm saying to you is it takes a hell of a lot of work to reclaim your authority over your body, but also over what has happened to you. Because we live in a world that is always going to tell you that it is your fault. And they believe legitimately so that it is your fault. They allow predators to continue to prowl this earth. And this supposed confusion around consent only fuels that. When people are really not confused. And you only have to look in the comments under certain videos to see that people aren't confused. They just want to be able to do what they want to do to you without consequence. Now, if this is coming across too hard, too harsh, too sharp, yeah, you see, the reality of sex when it goes wrong is that. So this is why I'm not going to sugarcoat this, and this is why I'm not lacing it in morality, because really it has nothing in terms of you. If you are only to stay fully clothed, I can tell you as somebody who did modesty like I was brushing my teeth, did that, been there. I lived that. In fact, I think 90% of my time, especially up until the age of, I'd say 32, I was dressed in a full skirt and dress. I didn't even wear trousers most of the time, because the religion I came from, when you engaged in worship activities, you were to wear a skirt or a dress as a woman. So most of the time, if I wore trousers, it was, you know, yeah, most of the time. You dress modestly, these things still happen to you. And we do not need to go into the details of the fact that, you know, you can be dressed anyhow, anyway, and these things can still happen to you. You can be sober. You can be awake. You can be with the man that you made vows to, a man that made vows to you, and your body can still be violated. These are the uncomfortable truths that they don't want you to know as a woman, because when you wake up to them, you will move differently. You will move very differently, not because there's a guarantee, but because you understand the stakes. And when you have to live in a body and a mind that has been violated, it is a different story. And it's very difficult when you may be seeing online this online discourse that is very casual, cavalier even, might I add, where you've got people who are not experts, people who are not specialists, they're not even lawyers, pontificating and outrightly calling people liars. People who have maybe reported that they experienced something. And lastly, what I will say on this, like, it's never going to be okay. I personally will never accept that it is okay to know somebody is drunk and take them to any space or place and engage in any sexual activity with them. That is not okay. That is not okay. That's it. But this is why I'm saying to you, alcohol use and having your wits around you is very, very important.